Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Sadhguru Center Speaker Series. For those of you who are joining us from different parts of the world, please feel free to share in the chat where in the world you are joining us from today. My name is Tulsi Chase, and I'm the Head of Education and Outreach at the Sadhguru Center for a Conscious Planet. And today we're really, really happy to welcome you all to a special Sadhguru Center Speaker Series events. These are monthly discussions and lectures happening virtually and highlighting the research and explorations of our multidisciplinary community of scientists, global experts, and thought leaders. So for those of you who are joining us for the very first time, Sadhguru Center is a multidisciplinary research center based within the Department of Anesthesia, Critical Care, and Pain Medicine at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center here in Boston, Massachusetts. Our focus is to bring tools of well-being to both patients and healthcare providers, as well as the general public, to enhance consciousness, cognition, and compassion. So our work is really at the nexus of research, education, and outreach. We offer wellness programs, we conduct scientific studies in various communities, and we bring together world leaders from diverse fields to collaborate and innovate health and well-being solutions. So you can learn more about Sadhguru Center for a Conscious Planet via our website, which will be shared in the chat. So I'm really, really excited today to be talking about this really pertinent topic of mental health and well-being for both students as well as corporate professionals. And as we all know, workplace wellness has become a very important aspect of culture in the way that we work, especially with the pandemic affecting this in a big way. And even students' mental health has been very deeply impacted because of the changes that have been made in the education system and culture through this pandemic. And Dr. Tracy Chang, who is joining us today from the Rutgers School of Management and Labor Relations, is an expert in looking at organizational behavior. She's an associate professor of organizational behavior at the School of Management and Labor Relations at Rutgers University. And she's been doing quite a few studies in this area. She's received her MBA from the Stern School of Business at New York University and her PhD in sociology from the University of Iowa. She currently teaches organizational behavior and leadership in organizations at Rutgers and is a qualified mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher trained at the University of Massachusetts Medical School, as well as a certified Isha Hatha Yoga teacher with 1,750 hours of training in classical Hatha Yoga. Her current research interests include the effects of inner engineering programs and Isha Yoga on employee well-being and leadership development, as well as their effects on student well-being and academic engagement in higher education. So it is our absolute honor to welcome you, Dr. Tracy Chang. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing about this really important work. I'm going to stop sharing my slides so you can go ahead and share yours. A warm welcome to you, and please take it away.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank members of our research team. Without them, these research projects won't be possible. And on behalf of our research team, we would like to thank the Sadhguru Center for offering us this opportunity to share our research findings with you today. And we would like to thank everyone, wherever you are, making time to join us today. So today we will be going over research projects on the impacts of inner engineering practices on students and professionals. A brief outline, a roadmap of our discussion today. To provide a context for our research programs, we will first look at the mental health continuum and the positive movement in many fields of research in recent years. Then we will look at key inner engineering practices that are used in two streams of research. One stream involves the well-being and flourishing of college students, and the other stream involves the well-being and flourishing of working professionals. There will be time for us to have a conversation. We welcome any questions and comments and feedback that you have for us, and we will have time for a conversation at the end of the webinar today. So before we dive into the research program and look at the mental health continuum, we would like to know how everyone is feeling right now. So there will be a poll showing up on your screen. The question is, how are you feeling? So we'll let you self-identify yourself on these 4 states. All right. Okay, everyone had a chance to participate in this now? So we can quickly look at the results. There's some feeling stressed, feeling meh, indifferent. I think most people, about 50%, feeling joyful, energetic, and engaged. So that makes me very hopeful for the next hour also. Thank you everyone for participating in the poll. The next question is, same if we share the results. All right. Then the next question is, in your ideal world, how would you like everyone to feel? All right. Everyone has a chance to participate? Okay. Okay, so here's the results. So this is great because we are all very ambitious. We have high aspirations. 71% of people want everyone in the world to feel meditative, inclusive, bliss, and even ecstatic. So this is the results from our polls. I share the results. I don't know if everyone can see that. So this is our motivation for this research projects. We want everyone in the world feeling I have a frozen screen, so give me a moment to advance the slide. So I have a little bit of technical challenge. Let me try this. All right. So this is our ideal world. Everyone's feel well, great, and they feel fulfilled and feel their life meaningful in whatever that they do. For students, it could be their studies. For working professional, is their work. So this is what motivated us to study the inner engineering practices. We want to identify evidence-based tools for us to use to promote our own well-being and flourishing in many different areas of life. And we think this is a baby step toward the direction of realizing this ideal world that we all share. So we will come back to the mental health continuum. A sociologist named Corey Keyes, he identified 3 states in this mental health continuum. I added 1 at the other end. So typically, healthcare professionals or psychologists, we focus on the mental illness or disorders, which is at one end of the continuum here. We want to reduce the symptoms of psychological disorders. In about 2000, 20 years ago, there is a launch of a new field of studies, and that is positive psychology. Positive psychology, its definition, the founder, Seligman, defines positive psychology in this way, quote, a science of positive experience, positive individual traits, and positive institutions promises to improve quality of life and prevent the pathologies that arise when life is barren and meaningless. So positive psychology shifted the focus of study to this state we called flourishing and well-being. So it's not only about feeling great, feeling good, physically, psychologically, but people also find meanings in their work or in whatever they do in their life. They feel accomplished. They have supportive relationships in their life. So their function is at their optimal capacity. But then there's this middle state that you see here in the green. Keys call them languishing. So in this state, people don't have signs, don't have symptoms of psychological disorder, but they don't show signs of well-being either. So it's these feelings of feeling dull, feeling aimless, joyless, indifferent, feeling stagnation, and feeling stuck. A recent New York Times articles describe languishing as, quote, it's like muddling through your days and you see your life through this foggy windshield. So this is the middle child, neglected middle child of the mental health continuum. And we will look at, and it's important because it's a risk factor for mental illness. So let's look at where we now. American Psychological Association found that 67% of Americans reported an increase in stress during COVID. And a consumer survey through social media, online community, they found that 65% of people aged 18 to 35 were identified as languishing. This is the highest number compared to other age groups. So the younger generation, they seem to be affected by the pandemic more than other generations, such as the boomers. Overall, about 48% were identified as being in the languishing state. In terms of employee engagement, the number of employees reported that they were engaged, actively engaged in their work, has been hovering over 30% also. Last year, 2021, we've observed a first time in a little bit dip in employee engagement. So we have some distance to walk from where we are now to the ideal world that we all share and identified. So let's come back to the mental health continuum. So I added an extra state here when it's being conscious and in a state of bliss, ecstasy. When psychology the field was born about 20 years ago, some researchers quickly pointed out that actually there are systems of techniques toward well-being, such as yoga and meditation, have been well established for millennia in the East. And these systems could be a gold mine, quote, the psychologists, for positive psychologists to draw from in terms of theories and practice. And these methods could also enable individuals to experience these exceptional states of being conscious and extraordinary psychological capabilities. So I added this state here. According to Sadhguru, he said that these methods are not about building superhumans, but it's to realize that being human is super. And in 2019, at the International Positive Psychology Association's annual meeting, Seligman and his research associates had begun to explore the mystical experience and try to understand these experiences. So we probably will see the components of this fourth state will be included in the mental health continuum. So positive psychology has inspired many positive movements in many fields of research. Positive intervention is one. We want to promote positive behaviors, emotion, and behaviors, and identify strategies and pathways toward these positive outcomes. And in education, there's this movement of positive education. We want to teach students not only the traditional academic skills, enable them to achieve economic well-being, but we also want to teach students skills of well-being so that the economic well-being and inner well-being will be more balanced. Then there's this new field of positive organizational behavior. This field identifies human strengths and psychological capacities at work. So employees can solve problems, recover, bounce back from setbacks, and feel more engaged at work. And then there's another field is the positive leadership, and that is to lead, to unleash human potentials, leading in such a way that is life-giving rather than life-depleting. So this provides the context of our two research programs. The key inner engineering methods that were used in these two streams of research are mainly three. One is the inner engineering online program. This consists of 7 online lessons and a system of Isha Yoga and other meditation processes online. A photo is missing here, but this is a system of Isha Yoga, and 2 particularly were used in the first study we'll look at, and that's Yoga Namaskar and Nadi Shuddhi. And the third method here is there's a book. It's called Inner Engineering, a Yogi's Guide to Joy, and a system of Yoga that was, those components were incorporated into a credit course and evaluation the effectiveness of the credit course. So Sadhguru coins the term inner engineering to means technology for well-being. So here our 2 research programs, one focused on college students on their stress and well-being during COVID, and the other is the evaluation of this 1 credit course based on the inner engineering methodology. The other stream of research, we conducted 2 studies. One is a corporate pilot study, and the other is a study that we recruit participants from the inner engineering online open enrollment programs. So let's first look at this college students study. So this is published in the Applied Psychology, Health and Wellbeing Journal, online Isha Yoga for students' mental health and well-being during COVID-19, a randomized controlled trial. So we launched this.
A nutrição, até você se formar na nutrição, isso pode te.
So this study was launched during the early phase of the pandemic outbreak. We launched these trials consisting 2 groups, intervention and control group. The intervention consists of 2 yoga practices, Yoga Namaskar and Nadi Shuddhi. Those who are assigned to the intervention group, they learn these 2 practices online, which it takes about 25 minutes or so. After that, they were instructed to practice Yoga Namaskar 3 cycles daily for the remaining 12 weeks and 4 minutes of Nadi Shuddhi. So the practice daily is about 17 minutes. Then the control groups were instructed to continue their normal life activities, and they will cross over at week 4 to learn these yoga practices. The outcomes we look at in these studies are stress and well-being. Excuse me, this is not the right slides here. Let me go back to the slides. Okay. Okay, this is the slide I was looking for. Sorry about that. So the primary outcome, we have stress and well-being. And stress was measured by the 10-item perceived stress scale. Well-being was measured by the 14-item Waldrich-Enderberg well-being scale. There are other secondary outcomes, including positive and negative affect and anxiety and depression, and also a resilience measure. So let me see if I can go back to the design here. So these measures are taken at baseline, and they are measured again weekly through the 12 weeks of study, although different outcomes are measured at the different interval of the study. We recruited participants nationwide in the US. We like to thank those colleagues at universities, faculty, administrators, students, leaders of student organizations, and volunteers of Isha Foundation to help us recruit nationwide. And we collected the data in late May 2020 and concluded the data collection in February 2021. We have a total of 679 students completed the baseline survey, and they were randomized into the two groups, intervention and control. So because of time, let me share our findings with you now. This is a table, but I marked key numbers we want to look at. So here you will see the primary outcome with stress and well-being, comparing those in the intervention group and control group for the first 4 weeks. We observed that the stress for the intervention group has reduced significantly compared to the control group. For well-being, we measure well-being at a biweekly interval. So the effect of these practices on well-being was observed as early as week 2. And observe again at week 4 compared to the baseline between the intervention and control group. For those in the control group, after they learned these practices, they also reported a reduction in stress significantly, and also an increase in well-being compared to 4 weeks ago before they learned these Upa Yoga practices. Other secondary outcomes, depression, we observe a reduction in depression at week 2, but we didn't see that at week 4. Positive emotion also was observed in week 4, comparing intervention and control group. For control group, they also experienced an increase in positive emotions at 4 weeks after they learned the yoga practices. Here is a dive into look at the comparison between the adherents and non-adherent participant compared to the control group. So for those participants who practice this Yoga Namaskar and Nadi Shuddhi 3 days or more per week, we consider them as adherents. they adhering to the recommended practices. So as you can see here, compared to the control group and the adherent groups in this black and white checkers board like bar, we can see a more significant reduction in stress and increase and reduction in depression. And for well-being and positive, we observe a significant increase for the adherence. So this suggests the importance of practicing yoga at the regular and consistent basis. Here, I know there are many numbers and lines here, but here basically these charts tell us that at the end of the study, at the end of the 12 weeks, both intervention groups and control group participants, they experienced reduction in stress, anxiety, depression, as well as negative emotion. And for positive outcomes such as well-being, positive emotion, and resilience, this both group of participants also report improvement in these positive outcomes at the end of the 12 weeks. So we concluded that online Isha Yoga shows promise for mitigating the pandemic's impact, negative impact on college students' mental health and improve their well-being over the course of the COVID pandemic. The good news is that these practices are not designed or offered exclusively for college students. Anyone age 14 and up can learn these practices and do these practices and benefit from these practices. These instructions are freely available online, made available online by the Isha Foundation. Our study had limitations. Future studies may use active controls, for example, and longer control periods. For ethical and compassionate reason, we limit the control period to 4 weeks because we didn't want to withhold these tools from students, but we want to get more rigorous result by a controlled comparison. So we limit the control period to 4 weeks. Future study may want to extend that. I want to quickly just mention this study because it's a work in progress under Frontier in Education journal. This is a study to evaluate this 1-credit college course using a quasi-experimental 1-group pre-test and post-test design. The outcomes are many different markers of well-being and flourishing in life and in the academic settings. And we measure these outcomes at the beginning of the 1-credit course and at the end of the 1-credit course 8 weeks later. The course was offered in the fall of 2018 and spring of 2019, and a total of 97 students participated in the study. The course has 2 major components. One component is reading the book, Inner Engineering, and engage in this sadhana offered in the book, which is experiential activities. And students also write about their experiences of doing these activities. They also learn a system of Isha Yoga, 7 practices. And the results showed that students, after completing the course, they reported improvement in well-being across different markers here, and also feeling a more meaningful life in the area of flourishing. They also build up their academic psychological capital. For example, they feel more confident in presenting their ideas in group discussions. They also engage more in their study. They feel energetic when they study, and they feel their studies are more meaningful to them at the end of the study. So the recommendation based on this study is that inner engineering practices and methodology can be embedded in formal curriculum in higher education. And this shows promise as a positive education intervention toward well-being and flourishing in college. There are other similar initiatives across the country. For example, inner engineering online course offered as credit course at George Mason University. Stanford Medical School also pioneered credit course using yoga tools. So this is to show that inner engineering methodology can help to build a positive universities. Edis et al. In 2011 identify 5 key elements and environments for building a positive university through formal learning environment, classroom, curriculum, through social environment, student relationship, and through work environment, reducing stress for faculty and administrators, because those are the people who students will be interact with at the university, and through residential environment, campus life, and through volunteering activities with local community in terms of external environments. So we see that there are 3 ways that inner engineering methodology can contribute to build this positive environment in formal learning environment and through campus life. This Upa Yoga are freely offered online, and student organizations can make this available for students. But as I said earlier, these programs are not designed exclusively for students. Faculty and administrators can also benefit from these practices and promote their well-being and promote a positive university environment. So this is some recommendation that we would propose. So now let's look at the professionals. There are 2 studies. One is a very small corporate pilot focusing on employees at the Fortune 500 company. And the other is we recruited more participants, a larger sample through IEO open enrollment programs online. The intervention here is the inner engineering online program consists of 7 online lessons introducing participants to mechanics of life, for example, and there are topical lessons every session, and also meditation processes at the end of the session. Participants will also learn the system of Upa Yoga practice along with other meditations and practices. So this is the what we call the theoretical models, and this is the mind map that guide us in selecting these outcomes that we measure in these studies. So the theories and the hypothesis is that inner engineering methodology, this course, online course, equip participants with knowledge and skills that they can optimize their systems, physiological system, cognitive system, emotion system, and their energetic system. So these systems function in a unifying, harmonious way. And so they have a sense of wholeness or oneness, a foundation for well-being. And we also identify markers associated with each of these dimensions. For example, feeling restful, in terms of sleep quality, when the physiological system is functioning optimally, and being mindful, aware, and feeling joyful, and feeling vital, subjective vitality. And we also hypothesize that this inner engineering methodology will have, because of the multi-components feature quality, it has a synergistic effect on flourishing. for professionals to feel their work is meaningful. They build up more psychological capacity to deal with the challenges at work. And mostly, more importantly, they engage in work, because this engagement, the ability to immerse oneself fully in the project is one of the best predictor for well-being during the pandemic. So the study design is a quasi-experimental one-group designed with pre-test and post-test. The intervention, as I mentioned earlier, is the inner engineering online program with Isha Yoga. The outcomes are various markers of well-being and positive work outcomes. We'll take a brief, quick look at that. And the measure is at the beginning of the course and at the end of the course, 4 weeks later. So the first study was published in the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine. Because of the small sample, 16 employees, we just use a plot charts to look at the pattern of changes. So here you will see many lines. The green lines basically indicates that the participant experience an increase in scores in that outcome, and the green lines is a decline, and blue line is stay the same. So as you can see here, many participants experience improvement in mindfulness and in vitality. In the work-related outcomes, they also have a sense of meaningful work and psychological capital and work engagement. The second study with the larger samples was recently published in Journal of Integrative and Complementary Medicine. So this sample is larger with 2,063 participants. They are global, coming from different regions of the world. North America constitute about 50% of our samples. They work in different industries, and they also have different employment position, being an employee, or they're supervisors, managers, leaders, or they're entrepreneurs, and they work in different company sizes. So the outcomes here, results, we saw the largest effect of the IEO on well-being is in the area of subjective vitality and joy and mindfulness. Other areas also participants also experience positive improvement in the sleep quality, feeling more restful, and this sense of integrity within, feeling oneness, and also psychological capital and work engagement. We do another analysis based on the employment employment positions, in terms of whether they are employees without any subordinates, without supervisory responsibility, or they're supervisor, managers, or leaders in organization, or they are entrepreneurs. So what we want to know is, does IEO work equally well for different group of professionals? And here the results show us that is yes, regardless of your employment position, being an employee or being a leader in organizations or being an entrepreneurs, they benefit from the inner engineering online programs in well-being and in also flourishing related outcomes associated with meaningful work, psychological capital, and work engagement. So because of time, I'm moving this through this very quickly. So we will have time for questions. If anything you would like to know more, we definitely can come back and revisit these findings. So our conclusion is that IEO may increase well-being and positive work outcomes for employees, for managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs. And it could be used for leadership development purpose. Future studies may examine the effect of IEO for frontline workers during the COVID pandemic, because these studies, our studies were conducted before the pandemic. Now, this is a graphic representation to sum up our research programs. For 2 years also, I've been wanting to make this graph, but this talk has motivated me to make it happen. So how we think about this is the inner engineering practices and methodology are very fundamental. So they have a very high leverage point by enabling individuals to know how to work with these systems, the cognitive system, emotional system, physiological system, and the energetic system. So when these systems are functioning at the optimal levels and also in unison, functioning in a unifying way, we will find synergistic results in many areas of life for many different group of people. Here we have students and professionals. But basically, the first things this inner engineering practice will do is reduce stress. And from that is promoting well-being, being aware, more mindful, more joyful, restful, and more exuberant. And in many different areas of life for students in the academic setting, they build up psychological capacity and more engaged in their study. And for professionals, also they have this similar capacity to deal with challenges at work. And most importantly, to be involved in the work, in the projects that they're doing. And finally, inner engineering practices also have implication for leadership development, because leaders, they serve as models for employees. So when they are well and they are functioning at the best possible way, then that could influence the followers in the workplace for them also to be well and function at their best capabilities. So this is just to sum up our research program. So we have some distance to walk from where we now to the very ideal world that we all share. We want to see everybody feel well and function at their best possible capabilities. So this is just a very baby step to take us toward that direction by identifying evidence-based tools that we can use to promote well-being and flourishing for college students and professionals in our studies. But this methodology can be used beyond these two populations. So we thank you for your attention and engagement throughout this talk. So I think we will have some time for questions, feedback, comments, ideas for future studies. All are welcome. My email address is also on the slide here. If we don't get to answer your questions today, please feel free to contact me for any questions that you might have. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Tracy, there was outstanding body of work that you've built in the last few years. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And also, I think the most important, I've been trying to answer some of the questions in the chat box, but one question that maybe should come from you is, what is the physiology behind these changes? I know you had a theoretical picture out there. If you want to elaborate on that, it'll be great.
Actually, Bala, you would be the best person to answer this because I have no expertise in physiology. But let me go back to that framework quickly here. So, no, Bala, really, you're the best person to answer this. But for physiology, I can say that the outcomes we use is a sleep quality. So based on my own experience and according to what Sadhguru say about the physiology of these practices, is the system will become at ease. And so I am not.
So I just want to add, Tracy, I don't think they mean physiology, but the theoretical mechanism behind it. So there was work that was produced by David Vago and his group. David Vago is also a PhD in psychology, and he's also a neuroscientist currently in Vanderbilt, and he's part of Osher Institute, which is prevalent throughout the country. He and one of the psychiatrists, they put together a model called SRT. So the Srt Theory is self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-transcendence. Like Tracy had mentioned in her talk, it is a fundamental change in the way you think. It's like a complete overhaul of, in Sadhguru's words, of mind, body, energy, and emotions. And that leads to this SRT transformation, that is self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-transcendence. Once you see that, suddenly you start seeing all the changes in the positive psychology also. Most of our health studies always revolves around the disease states. And I'm so happy to see Tracy really focusing on the well-being states, which was actually defined in the 1940 WHO definition. It's not just getting rid of the disease, but it's also actually engaging in the positive psychology and the well-being. So that is my little addition to what body of work that Tracy is slowly building on the positive psychology models.
Thank you, Bala. I know that definition was announced in 1940s, like you say, but we keep quoting it, but then we keep focusing on one end of the spectrum. So that we hope that this will be there'll be more steps and more scholars working toward the well-being spectrum.
So one other question as things keep coming, what I want to ask is, in all the publications, one thing that is asked to you is to talk about the Cohen effect size. So is there something that you can correlate to? What does it mean to be a 17% increase, a 20% increase, and 30% increase? Fundamentally, I understand that my knowledge comes from Sadhguru's teachings. It's, are you better than yesterday? So even a 1% increase is good for me. But can you relate it to something that people can understand when a 16%, 20% increase in these linear scales? What does it actually mean? And what does a Cohen effect size mean?
So the Cohen effect size was computed from the means and then standard deviation. So it's a statistical estimate to gauge the effect of the interventions on outcomes, but it's aggregate measure because it involves standard deviation. So I don't know, it can answer precisely if it's related to the percentage change in one individuals, but it also relates to the outcomes that measure. But in a general rule of thumbs is 0.2 in Cohen effect size, and 3 is considered small, 0.5 is medium, and 0.8 is large. But the effect size also depends on the outcome. So for some outcomes for depression and anxiety, for example, some studies, they consider 0.2 is a significant clinically to see an improvement in that effect size. So we can compute the percentage change, how this pre and test scored, but I'm not sure if they correlate perfectly for the Cohen effect size. But the Cohen effect size is a statistical estimate for us to think about the effects, how much impact of the intervention. But again, it depends on the disciplines and the outcomes that we measure.
Thank you, Tracy. Before I ask something else, there is something that came up in the chat. Is there a translation that maps the benefits at a personal level and how it can translate to an organizational effectiveness, enjoyable place to work, creativity, flexibility, improved relationships, etc. So you want to address that? I know you have a picture on the screen, but you want to add anything to it?
You mean map this outcome within an individual?
Yeah, you see the benefits at a personal level, but how does it translate to the organizational level?
Yes, that's a very good question. So this is the gap between the micro and the macro, right? So how would this amount to organizational level changes? Right now in our studies, we still measure this outcome at the individual level. So some studies, few, have measured how this individual outcome may lead to organizational financial performance, for example. So they draw the relationship here, measure the employee's individual outcome and try to link it financial performance at the organizational level. But that is the greatest challenges that we have as sociologists, is how do we bridge this gap from the micro level in the individual and the organizational level. So one way is to collect organizational level outcome. For example, the performance or turnover, for example, is another outcome that we can measure. For example, if we implement IEO in an organization, sometimes within the next year, for example, we will see a reduction in employees turnover, because if they find their work meaningful, psychological capital is high and engaged in their work, we'll hypothesize that as an organization, the turnover rate should reduce that way. And so that's one way we could do, is to collect organizational level outcome measures.
What comes to my mind is having a critical mass of people in any organization going through this, individual change. For example, Sadhguru quotes a percentage of 30% of people being a critical mass, or I don't know what that is. So that could be the point of research. What percentage of people within an organization at what levels actually need to have this individual changes that can lead to total organizational change. So
yes, so there's
building
this
the critical mass is the key, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, so in terms of innovation, there's this chasm. The critical mass, I think, is about 30%, 40% also, and then it will tip the curve over. The majority will be accepting these practices. So I think it's about 30-40% also based on the innovation cycle. But that's another research point where we identify where is the critical point mass to generate organizational level change.
I see Beth in the audience. Beth, thanks for joining us, and she's president-elect for the next. I'll let you introduce yourself, Beth. You want to go ahead and talk about yourself? Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Bal. This is tremendous to be here and learn this wonderful research. Tracy, thank you for sharing that. Also, the PDF versions of the articles. I will dive into these deeply, and I know I will learn a significant amount. I wanted to share some of the research that I found. I think you may also find it interesting, and I wish I could pull up the resources like I asked you to do. Maybe I'll be able to before we close today, but I was reading some research that was sharing that you do find reduced cortisol levels. And also interestingly with immunity, you actually find markers, salivary IgA markers increase with yoga compared to control. So I think in lifestyle medicine, at any rate, we also try to use exercise and yoga as one of our recommendations. And looking at some very early seedling studies, I think the salivary IgA study was only, say, 35 people, but it's a rich area to dive into. Your question, as somebody posed about about mechanism of stress reduction and how this is happening. And I think it's all coming, it's going to become more clear as more and more researchers look into it. But I think that drop in cortisol is a really important player here. Bala, I'm sure you have other things to add, but I just thought I would share that. And I wanted to thank you for the inspiration for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I want to say myself, so Beth didn't introduce herself. So Beth is actually president-elect for American Lifestyle Medicine. So that's fine.
Yes,
so
sorry about that. Yeah,
That's
and
okay.
I'm on faculty here at Harvard as a assistant professor, and I'm part-time there, and I'm located at Spalding Rehab Hospital. Thanks, Bala.
Yeah. So I know maybe this is not the forum for talking about our research on the cortisol and the previous research on Isha practices, etc. But it's a solid body of work that has been done on the immunity aspects. And the latest is Vijay Chandran's work that was published in PNAS. So I'll stop with that. And I'm hoping that if there's no other question, I have something more to ask, but let's just give others an opportunity. If someone else has something else to ask, please raise your hand or come forward to ask the questions to Tracy. Okay, so while you're waiting for others, Tracy, the major challenge for even these simple practices that we have and seeing this, transformation that can be measured with the scales, etc., is for people to comply with these practices and, stick to it. Based on your studies, what is your finding on the compliance rates of these practices in the participants?
For the online Isha Yoga study, our compliance was quite high. And this could be that the practices were simple. There are only 2 practices, and it takes about 17 minutes to practice. And so for our compliance is quite high. I think for the 3 days or more, I think it's about 50%, over half is compliant that way. So like you say, this is a constant challenge for us. So for the study, we didn't have any mechanism other than the follow-up email to remind them that this is, this practice is, it's here for you, and we have linked to the videos. But this is across the board for online intervention, and especially that also has challenge in terms of compliance. And then plus this is a yoga meditation intervention. So for the yoga's online studies, it's quite high. And but then if we think about this student, they were signed up for this 3-month study, they probably have a great motivation to begin with. So they stay with the practice.
Great.
If that answers.
So that is what is impressive is, at least 2 or 3 years before this work, not much was done in the Upa Yoga and the, Upa Yoga is the pre-yoga or the simple practices that we can be giving to the participants and defining how much time is needed. It is literally similar to the American Heart Association recommendations for exercise. It is like 20 minutes a day, 3 or 4 times a week. If you do it consistently, you will start seeing the benefits. It is fundamentally much more than that, but if you're going to look at just the simple benefits, then maybe that is good enough for you. Sorry, Tracy, you're going to say something.
And also the reminder, an app will be wonderful to test this out. Because we use email, students sometimes they don't even check emails anymore. So a very, very simple app, just 2 practices, 17 minutes, 15 minutes a day, and then remind them. And we can see if that will even enhance the compliance further.
Yeah, so that is any institute that has the breadth of, tell me how much time you have, we have a practice for you. All you have to do is do it consistently. So it seems like that is any institute. I mean, I know of Isha, but there are probably other institutes as well which have this broader approach. You know, you can go in breadth as well as depth. There is probably something for everybody, and all you need to do is just be compliant. So
Yes.
this is great. Thank you so much, Tracy, again for
Thank you so much,
coming
everyone. Thank you.
and participating and coming out with this. So I'll let Tulsi take over.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chang, for sharing about this really pertinent and important work that you're doing. And hopefully this is only the foundation for more and more studies to happen in this area, in both in students' well-being as well as in professionals and in the workplace well-being. So thank you for being with us today and answering questions. For all of you who are here from all around the world, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you found this engaging and interesting and inspiring to you as you continue on your own well-being journey as well. And we want to invite you to continue to engage with us in future speaker series. So I think you should all be able to see our upcoming speaker series, which is happening exactly a month from today, March 23rd. This is going to be a talk actually that was referenced in today's conversation, which is looking at some of the impacts of yoga and meditation on mental and physical health, but specifically looking at it from the framework of gene expression and looking at how a particular meditation program called Samyama helps to boost immunity. So we'll be having Dr. Vijayandran Chandran, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Pediatrics at University of Florida School of Medicine, joining us to share about his work next month. And this is a really exciting topic, and actually his publication, which was published within the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, has been featured in over 24 publication platforms globally and has received a lot of global just views and interest. And so you can see all the different languages in which already there's been information about this translated, and we hope that you'll be joining us to learn more about this study and hear about it. This will be in the format of an interview where one of the members of our team, who's actually a neuroscientist who looks at inflammation in a deeper way, is going to be asking Dr. Chandran some questions. So it'll be a really interesting format, and we hope that you all will join us next month. As always, please stay in touch with us and connect with us on social media. That is one of the best ways that you can learn about all our upcoming events and programs. In the chat, you'll see the links directly to the different social channels on which you can stay connected with us. So please do so. And we look forward to hearing from you and hearing continued questions and inquiries from you as well. And thank you so much for joining us. You know, if you're interested in engaging with us in future events and programs, or even collaborating with us on research, there'll be a link in the chat that you can click to, an interest form that you fill out that will allow us to know a little bit more about you and see how we can collaborate and connect. So thank you all for joining us. Stay in touch with us and reach out if you have any further questions or ideas to connect. Have a lovely rest of your evening, and take good care.
Thank you.